lizards. I bet when you start reading Overlord, the series where the main protagonist is this evil, overpowered skeleton necromancer, you didn't think you would read a book where you follow the point of view of lizards, and yet, here we are. I would love to hear the conversation between the writer and the editors or whoever is in charge. They're all around the table salivating at all the extremely marketable characters in Overlord. The figurines of Albedo by themselves must make more money than the economies of certain countries. And then the author says his next book is about lizards, and everybody freezes around the table. Like, does he mean lizards like how Entoma is an insect? You know, sexy lizards, lizards we can make money from? And he's like, nope, just ugly humanoid looking things like the villain from Spider-Man. They plead with him, but he doesn't listen. The author says, the lizards stay, but don't worry, I'll add in a sexy scene just for you. So let's see if this bold decision paid off with Overlord Volume 4, The Lizardman Heroes. And let's start with a quick look at the artwork as usual, and I love this cover, it's pure chaos. It really sells how disorganized and messy the fight between the Lizardman and the undead was. Everyone is trampling each other, fighting each other, making menacing faces. If not for the fact that, you know, this is lizards and skeletons, this would pass off as a painting that you could see in a museum. It has a very artsy vibe, I can't quite explain. On the foldable pages we have Cocytus fighting the Lizardman in what is not the most exciting artwork in the series, but the lack of vivid colors really sells how bleak the situation is for the Lizardman and also helps sell the icy vibe from our big jacked frost insect. And much like this volume contrasts the desperation of the Lizardman with the leisurely experiment of Nazarick, on the other page we have a very funny artwork. We have Aura seeing if her resistances can fight off diabetes, we have Demiurge playing with his bone Legos, and we have Shaltir pretending that drinks have an effect on her. From the other artworks, I just quickly want to highlight Victim's character design. It's so eerie, it's so creepy, and yet kind of cute at the same time with the little wings and the halo and all that. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm the weird one, but I think it's kind of cute. Now let's jump right into the story and address the humanoid lizards in the room. If you, like me, jumped into the light novel after the first season of the anime, then this is the first volume of new content that you got, and it's quite a whiplash. Coming from volume 3, which is in my opinion the most hype volume in the series, we follow that up with this book where we follow the point of view of these jolly old lizard creatures. Not only is this weird because it's the first time that we spend so much time in the story following someone that is not from Nazarick, but also, even though they were foreshadowed in the previous books, the Lizardmen still feel like they just pop out of nowhere into the narrative. The lake they live in has no real connection to the kingdom of Riestes, which we have been mainly following throughout the story, and we haven't seen a single Lizardman up until this point. Narratively speaking, it's like we were riding straight ahead and all of a sudden the author just did a huge turn like, nah, we're going over there for a moment. And to make this even stranger, unfortunately this volume doesn't age well from a story perspective, because our lizard friends don't really have any highlight after having almost this entire volume dedicated to them. They appear here and there in the story, and one of them is present in volume 11, but I wouldn't say they're super relevant for the story moving forward, obviously as of the time of this recording. Having said all this, the first time I read volume 4, and this time as well, I had a smile on my face. Not only do I respect the author for writing the story that he wants to tell, even if predictably this volume wasn't going to be super loved by the fans, but also I think he pulls it off. To me, volume 4 was an entertaining read, and that's mostly because of two things. The first, which is obvious by now, is the author is a good fantasy writer. He knows how to write a cool fantasy setting that's interesting with all the magic and the magic items and the different races and the class archetypes, which he does so well. And most importantly, he knows how to structure a narrative so that we grow attached to and care for these characters that he introduces to us. Yes, I knew the Lizardman had absolutely no chance against Nazarick, and yet by the end I was rooting for Zaryusu, and I was very happy when Papa Bones mercifully revived him. So reading opinions online, I see that this volume is usually the least liked by fans, which I think is totally understandable. However, even if it is a bit jarring in terms of narrative comparing with the other books, I still like this volume a lot. And for the insane people that say that volume 4 is their favorite, like, come on guys, you're just just being contrarians. I'm not calling anyone a liar, but I have a very hard time believing that you read the entire Overlord collection and your favorite volume is volume 4. Okay, that seems a bit silly. However, to me, as a whole, this is still a very good read, as it has very cool character moments that are relevant throughout the story, and the fantasy setting, to me, I grew attached to the little lizards. What can I say? So speaking of our lizard friends, I really enjoyed how the author made them seem primitive and animalistic. The mating sounds and tail whips during the love at first sight, I guess, from Zaryusu and Crush Lulu were very entertaining and had me giggling both during the first time I read this volume and also now during this reread. And I absolutely adore the pragmatism that Lulu exhibits on this volume. Her face was full of determination. She made a clear declaration: I'm gonna get pregnant. It's so crude, but it fits so well these lizardmen that are more driven by base instinct. They are intelligent enough where their society feels thought out and they are interesting to follow as characters. However, at multiple points in this book you get reminded that these are not humans, these are lizardmen and they act quite differently. Zaryusu is a very fun protagonist to follow, and because he's a traveler, he's a bit of an outsider, which is good because it's a good narrative tool for the reader, also an outsider, to learn more about Lizardman society. He's very much a fantasy protagonist of his own. He's strong, he's brave, unwilling to back down even if it means his end. He inspires other people, the other lizards want him to rule. He's charismatic. He's like if Aragorn were a lizard man. And jokes aside, I've said this before about Gazef and Brain, but the author is very good at making side characters feel like they are protagonists of their own stories. Sometimes in fantasy series, or heck, all series for that matter, you have these secondary characters that feel static and empty, like they do not exist outside of interacting with the main character, and that is clearly not the case here in Overlord. I love how quickly the author manages to establish Zaryusu as someone competent and worthy of respect, but also as a tragic underdog that the reader roots for. There's this constant sense of dread throughout the book where the reader is almost hesitant to grow too attached to these characters because you know bad things are about to happen, and the author very smartly has established this precedent that Ainz does not revive characters. And that's why it's such a cool moment at the end when Ainz revives Zaryusu, because not only was it unexpected, but also in the eyes of the reader he truly deserves it. For how weak they were, they put up quite a fight. The man, or should I say the insect in charge of this expedition, was Cocytus. And okay, let's address the name thing first. I have a little bit of trouble reading certain names in English because they just sound awkward. So like for example, Seshirisu from ReZero just sounds better in Romaji. How am I supposed to pronounce Cocytus like for real? Is it Cocytus? Cocytus? It just sounds weird and strange, so I'll pronounce it how they do in the anime, and if you have a problem with that, please send me a fax so that I can look at it later. Cocytus is one of my favorite guardians because I'm a boring person. I see a giant jacked bug with swords and I'm like, that's my guy. I was super happy that he was featured in this arc, and I really like his evolution. It's absolutely fascinating. We see from his dialogue that he's not the most articulate, and by peeking into his inner thoughts we see that he's not as intelligent as Demiurge or Albedo. And yet he has enough individuality and agency once empowered by Ainz to where he actually speaks out against an order of the all-powerful Bone Daddy. This scene is monumental in context of the story, not only because we see that Guardians can actually disagree and not blindly accept everything that Ainz says, but also because it shows that they can evolve as characters, they can grow, and as Ainz says in this book, lack of growth is stagnation. It's such a good scene in between the outrage of the other Guardians for Cocytus daring to speak out against Bone Daddy, to Cocytus, his bravery, he was all timid and introverted and flustered, having spoken out for the first time, and obviously Bone Daddy, who was secretly proud of his favorite insect. This scene is both a success from his perspective as he achieved what he wanted, but also is fuel for his paranoia that one day the Guardians will turn against him. We as the reader know that the Guardians are absolutely loyal to a fault, even sometimes obsessing over not being useful enough. However, Ainz doesn't know that, and so in his mind he's just surrounded by highly powerful, capable psychopaths. For Cocytus' fight scene, it's like when you take a max level character and just go spawn camp the noobs. They never had a chance, but it's fun to see them struggle. Like most fights with the Guardians of Nazarick, it would be over in a matter of moments if they actually fought for real, but there's always a narrative reason why these fights are longer than just a few good seconds. That's what she said. In the previous volume, we saw that Shaltir loves to play with her food, she loves to bully the weak in a level that almost borders incompetence, as we saw in volume 3. However, here Cocytus is the exact opposite. He decides to prolong the fight a little bit and give them a fight with honor because he respects the Lizardman. And once again, I love how despite being united in their absolute devotion towards Bone Daddy, the Guardians have very different personalities, and that shines through even the way they follow orders. The flex moment of Nazarick was also so extra, it was so entertaining. The Lizardmen are overjoyed to have defeated what the reader knows is just a fodder minion, and then Ainz comes, the true supreme one. Ainz Zulugon, the man so determined to not do laundry that he freezes an entire lake because he can. Why not make an entire stairway out of minions individually strong enough to strike fear into the Lizardman? Of course. We are so used to rooting for Nazarick in a weird way because they're the protagonists that when the script is flipped and we are now on the other side, we see how truly despair-inducing they can be. Seeing Nazarick show off is so demoralizing and Ainz won't even let them surrender. Everything Nazarick does feels royal and excessive and imposing. I know this is a weird thing to say about a book, but Overlord has such powerful aesthetics, it's weird. I really like the slice of life moments of Nazarick in this volume. It really played to the dark humor of this series. We see the Lizardmen despairing and struggling for their lives, and contrasting with that, we see Demiurge just playing with his bone Legos, just boys being boys. Overall, Volume 4 is a bit of an odd one, and I think it's entirely reasonable if some people don't like it. However, me personally, I really enjoy it, and I actually like it more upon rereading because the first time I was just a bit stunned and confused, and this time I was able to go with the lizard flow and enjoy it a lot more. This volume takes a bit of a detour with the Lizardman, but it does have some very important character moments, and it does show for the first time Nazarick as the invading force. Remember guys, these are the baddies. It's an important narrative tone shift because for the first 3 volumes it felt like Nazarick was always playing on the defensive, always hiding and trying to gather information. And then there's the big blunder in Volume 3 that shows Nazarick can be hurt, and so Volume 4 serves as a nice morale booster. After we see Nazarick at its lowest point, we get a grim reminder that Nazarick is a force to be feared and why everybody shall bow down to Bone Daddy. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in Volume 5. Ciao!